The sun had barely begun its climb over the horizon, yet the ranch was already alive with the familiar sounds of life, cattle lowing in the distance, the rustle of the wind through the tall prairie grass, and the soft creak of the old wooden fence that had stood for decades. For as long as I could remember, this land had been more than just property. It was a testament to my family's sweat, toil, and unwavering pride. Every ridge, every hollow held a story, stories of long summer days under the scorching sun, of winters where the cold bit through even the thickest coats, and of quiet nights where the stars reflected the dreams we'd worked so hard to achieve. It should have been my sanctuary, the place where my daughter could learn the value of patience, honesty, and perseverance. But standing there on that familiar ridge, I felt an ache gnawing at my chest. A betrayal I hadn't anticipated. My daughter, bright, trusting, and kind-hearted, had allowed my own son in law to plant seeds of doubt in her mind. He had convinced her that the ranch, our legacy, was merely a burden, a relic of a past era that offered little in the way of modern comfort or financial stability. I remembered their conversation vividly. My daughter, with that hesitant sparkle in her eyes, had asked me what I thought about selling. My heart had clenched at the very thought. And the son-in-law, oh, how I despised that smug certainty he carried as if the ranch were a puzzle he alone could solve, had nodded enthusiastically, promising prosperity, freedom, and opportunity. He didn't see what I saw. He didn't feel the pulse of the land beneath his boots, the way it whispered our family's history with every gust of wind. He thought it was just dirt and fences, but to me, it was life itself. I said nothing at first, choosing my silence carefully. My daughter looked to me for approval, for guidance, and all I could do was swallow my anger and disappointment. How could she not see it? How could she not understand that selling the ranch meant giving away decades of dreams of hard-earned resilience to someone who didn't care about any of it? Yet even in my despair, I carried a secret, one they could never have imagined. A truth buried deep within the land, hidden from the prying eyes of opportunists and fortune-seekers. It was the kind of secret that could shift the entire balance of power if revealed at the right moment. And for now, I held it close, nursing my heartbreak while silently plotting a course that would protect my legacy. As I watched them walk back toward the house, their hands intertwined and their voices light with excitement about their new plans, I felt the sting of betrayal settle into my bones. This was more than a sale. This was an attempt to erase history, to turn the place that had been my life into a commodity. But little did they know, the father they thought powerless was already several steps ahead. I clenched my fists, letting the wind whip through my hair as if to sharpen my resolve. They could try to sell the ranch, try to erase our past, but the secret I held, and the patience I had cultivated over a lifetime, would see them undone. And when the time came, they would understand, perhaps too late, that some betrayals are sweet only until the reckoning arrives. The ranch had always held its own rhythm, a steady pulse that no human voice could ever replicate. Yet lately, every corner of it seemed to murmur warnings, as if the land itself sensed the danger creeping closer. I wandered along the familiar paths, brushing my fingers across the weathered fence posts, inhaling the scent of sun, baked soil, and hay. It was a ritual that grounded me, reminding me that no matter how much my daughter had been swayed, no one could erase the essence of this place, not while I still drew breath. I remembered the day I first discovered the secret buried beneath the land, years ago when I had been a younger man, digging irrigation channels with my own hands. At first, it had seemed like nothing more than a strange rock formation, glinting faintly beneath the soil. But as I dug deeper, following the odd, metallic sheen, I realized it wasn't just rock. It was something rare, valuable, a treasure hidden by nature herself. Not gold, not jewels, but something far more precious to those who recognized its worth. a resource that could, if used wisely, ensure the prosperity of the ranch for generations to come. Since then, I had kept my discovery close, a secret shielded from anyone who might exploit it. I had shared it with no one, not my daughter, not even my wife before she passed. I had learned the hard way that greed often wore the mask of charm, and I had vowed never to let it take root on this land again. And now, watching my daughter flirt with the idea of selling the ranch, convinced by the silver-tongued promises of her husband, I felt a bitter taste of irony. They thought they were making a clever decision, thinking of money, comfort, and a modern life. But they had no idea that the very ground beneath their feet held the power to ruin them, or save them, depending on who wielded it. I knew I could confront them, lay bare the truth, and perhaps stop the sale immediately. But that would rob me of the advantage, and more importantly, it would rob my daughter of a lesson she had yet to learn. Patience, subtlety, and strategy were my allies now. I would watch, quietly manipulate, and let the story unfold on its own, all while keeping my secret close to my chest. As the sun climbed higher, I began to plan. Small, calculated steps questions left intentionally unanswered, minor inconsistencies in my words, carefully placed reminders of the ranch, his irreplaceable value. I would plant seeds of doubt around the son-in-law, let him reveal his true intentions without ever knowing I was aware. And through it all, I would protect my daughter, even if it meant letting her walk into the trap of her own naivety first. It was a strange comfort, this secret. It was my silent weapon, my quiet revenge waiting to be unleashed. The ranch had survived droughts, floods, and storms, and it would survive this betrayal too. And when the time came, the truth would shine brighter than any silver promise her husband had ever whispered. My daughter would finally see him as he was, and perhaps in the aftermath she would see me, not as a rigid, overbearing father, but as the guardian who had loved her fiercely enough to protect her from her own mistakes. Until that moment arrived, I walked the land alone, letting the wind whisper strategies into my ear. Every step, every glance, every careful smile I offered the two of them was a thread in the web I was weaving. And beneath it all, the secret waited, silent and patient, ready to turn betrayal into justice and heartbreak into vindication. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch, once a place of peaceful rhythm, had become a stage for a silent battle. I moved among the fields and barns with the ease of a man who had walked every inch of this land 1,000 times, but my eyes were sharper now, my mind a maze of careful calculations. Every conversation, every gesture, every passing glance between my daughter and her husband was a thread I could pull, a piece of the puzzle I could manipulate. I had no intention of confronting them directly yet. The beauty of revenge was in its patience, in the slow, inevitable unraveling that left no room for denial. It started with small, seemingly innocuous hints, a stray comment about market trends, a whispered caution about unscrupulous buyers, an old family ledger casually left where they would see it. Each seed of doubt was tiny, but it was enough. I noticed her furrowed brows when she reread certain letters, the way her husband's confident smile occasionally faltered under her questioning gaze. He had assumed he was in control, that his charm could bend her will like a reed in the wind, but he underestimated the quiet power of a father who knew the land, and the people who walked on it better than anyone else. The son-in-law tried to assert authority, trying to persuade her that selling the ranch was the rational choice. But with every meeting, every phone call, I had begun subtly feeding information that contradicted his assurances. I spoke of minor legal complications that might delay the sale, of rumors that certain buyers were less trustworthy than they appeared. I never lied outright. I simply revealed truths selectively, carefully framing them so that doubt would creep into his confidence like a slow poison. And my daughter, oh, my daughter, Watching the struggle in her eyes was both painful and necessary. She trusted him blindly, yes, but trust is fragile, easily chipped by even the smallest inconsistencies. She began to notice the little cracks in his narrative, the flickers of irritation when questioned, the way he avoided my gaze when I asked seemingly harmless questions about the land. It was subtle, invisible to most, but to me, it was a symphony of truths finally emerging. I also began leaving traces of the secret resource buried beneath the ranch, hints so obscure that only someone observant or greedy would notice. An unusual rock here, a glint of metal there, a casual comment about the soil's composition. I watched him, felt the shift in his demeanor as curiosity, and perhaps greed, nibbled at his edges. It was intoxicating, in a quiet, almost sacred way, to witness the unraveling of someone who had thought himself untouchable. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon and painted the prairie in blood, orange light, my daughter finally confronted me. Her voice trembled, a mixture of confusion, fear, and dawning realization. "Dad, what's going on? Why are you doing this?" I looked at her, my heart breaking at the conflict etched across her face, yet resolute in my purpose. "I'm not doing anything, sweetheart. I'm just showing you what's been here all along. Sometimes people only see what they want to see, and it takes a little clarity to recognize the truth." She didn't fully understand yet, but the seed had been planted. Doubt had begun to fracture her certainty, and the once unshakable confidence she had placed in her husband was now tinged with hesitation. My revenge wasn't loud or vengeful. It was quiet, insidious, precise, and it was already working. The final act of reckoning was approaching, though neither of them could see it yet. I would let the truth surface in its own time, letting them stumble upon it just as I had planned. Betrayal, I had learned, often carried its own sweet sting, and when the moment came, they would feel it in full, irreversible force. The day arrived with a hush over the ranch, as if the land itself held its breath, waiting for the inevitable reckoning. I had watched, waited, and carefully orchestrated every step leading to this moment. My daughter's trust in her husband had begun to crumble, and the quiet unease that had settled in her heart was now a storm ready to break. I could see it in her eyes, the questioning, the fear, the dawning realization that not everything was as it seemed. It began with a casual walk through the northern pasture, the section of the ranch where the land had always been most peculiar, the soil shimmering faintly under the sun. "Dad, what's that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, pointing to a glint of metal sticking from the earth. Her husband's face had gone pale, his usual charm replaced by a flicker of panic. He tried to brush it off with a joke, a weak attempt to regain control, but the moment had already passed. I knelt beside her, brushing the dirt away to reveal a rare mineral I had discovered years ago, a secret that had remained buried beneath our feet. "This," I said softly, "is worth far more than anyone imagined, more than any buyer could ever pay, more than money alone could measure." My daughter's eyes widened, a mixture of awe and disbelief reflecting the sunlight. Her husband's hands twitched, unable to conceal the greed that had now begun to reveal his true nature. We could still sell. This could fetch a fortune," he stammered, the confidence that had once been his armor now crumbling. I looked at him steadily, the years of betrayal and manipulation boiling beneath the calm surface. "You convinced her to sell what you didn't understand, to hand over something priceless for a fraction of its worth. That's your true mistake." Tears welled in my daughter's eyes as she stepped back, the reality of the situation crashing down around her. I didn't know," she whispered, her voice shaking. I thought he was helping us." Her gaze shifted to her husband, and in that instant, the illusion shattered. She saw the greed, the manipulation, the charm stripped away to reveal the man who had nearly destroyed everything she loved. I placed a hand on her shoulder. feeling the weight of both her heartbreak and the vindication that was now within reach. "Sometimes the people closest to us aren't always who we believe them to be," I said, "but it's never too late to see the truth and protect what truly matters." Her husband's attempts to argue, to twist the story, fell flat. He had underestimated the land, underestimated the secret I had guarded for years, and underestimated the bond between a father and his daughter. In that moment, he was powerless, exposed, and finally accountable for his actions. My daughter turned to me, gratitude and love flooding her expression. "Thank you, Dad, for protecting us, even when I couldn't see it," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. I nodded, feeling the heavy burden of betrayal lift, replaced by the quiet triumph of justice and the warmth of reconciliation. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting golden light over the ranch, I felt a deep sense of peace. The land was safe, our legacy intact, and my daughter's heart was clear of deception. Revenge, I realized, was never about cruelty. It was about revelation, about truth, and about ensuring that those who betrayed you understood the weight of their actions. The ranch, enduring and steadfast, whispered its approval in the rustle of grass and the sigh of the wind. And I knew that at last justice had been served, not with anger, but with patience, foresight, and love.